Benavides will be joining us. He's stuck in traffic, so he'll be joining us in a few minutes. So first, item 1, you want to go ahead and go through it?
Do we have public speakers?
Well, so just so you know, if you want to speak publicly, there's some public speaker cards up here. Please fill them out. Please fill them out and give them to Rosie. And then you can go up there and speak. If you need a translator, Susie wave. Thank you, Susie. Susie will be translating. I'm sorry? Yeah, and we're going to do the pledge before we start, and then we'll go through the minutes.
Perfect timing.
Councilman Tinajero, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
We have 2 public speakers, Norma Galvan and Joyce Fearborn.
Do you have David's packet? One of them, we sent David's packet down there for David. Do you have David's packet? You have one?
I don't have it. I can share with you.
Oh, no. I gave one to
Buenas tardes, señores del distrito. Muchas gracias por darme la oportunidad de estar aquí. Esta tarde estoy aquí en representación de muchos padres de Godines, pidiéndoles nos den la oportunidad de tener control del estacionamiento que está ubicado cerca de la escuela. También necesitamos tener control de lo que es el teatro. Nuestros estudiantes tienen muchísimas actividades y muchas veces hemos tenido que ir a otras escuelas para concretar esos trabajos cuando tenemos los espacios ahí. También les pido que nos den la oportunidad de controlar lo que es el gimnasio. Hay muchísimos atletas en la escuela y a veces es frustrante que tenemos el espacio ahí y no lo podemos usar. Tenemos que ir a otro lugar para usarlo. Yo no sé cómo se está trabajando todo esto. Yo como padre lo que puedo mirar es la necesidad que tenemos. Son muchos estudiantes y nuestra escuela se merece un espacio para eso. Muchas gracias.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity, members of the board and city. I'm here representing many Godinas parents asking for the opportunity to have control over the parking lot next to the school, also control of the theater. Our students have many activities and we have to go to other sites. I'm also here asking for the opportunity to control the gym. We have many athletes and it's quite frustrating not to have the availability when we have the space. I'm here for the need of many parents and students that we feel deserve the right to have access to the school.
Norma Galván.
Gracias. ¿Quiere que me siente ahí para traducir? Yo su hija le traduce toda la
No.
Ok.
Gracias.
A usted.
Gracias.
Okay. Good evening. Hi. My name is Joyce Fearborn, and I am first and foremost a parent of a beautiful SAUSD student, and then I'm also a teacher at Godinas Fundamental High School. Thank you so much for letting me talk again. I'm kind of cracking up because I haven't talked this much probably my entire life to people, besides being in the classroom. I think what Ms. Galvan said was perfecta. I think we just want to see our kids have as much opportunity to use the facilities as we can. And I just feel like, you know, in teaching, it's always work smarter, not harder. And our athletics director, she spends so much time scheduling. And, you know, I wish we could all foresee into the future what we need for the gym in 7 months from now. But she spends so much time doing scheduling and coordinating, and that time could be used so much more efficiently to work with our athletes. And one of the best things about being a parent is when you see your athletic director at your kids' events. And so many times she's like, I couldn't make it because I was coordinating or something came up with use of the gym. If we had control of the parking garage too, we could start fundraising. And there's so many things that our gym needs and our theater needs. I know our refrigerator's on its last legs. And it's just a smarter way with the joint use agreement of having control of just the theater so our kids can perform and play and get as much use out of Godinas as they want to. And what's really awesome is I've had some late nights working when my kid has practice till 8. And, you know, I'll come out at 7, you know, maybe to go get dinner or just take a walk to stretch my legs. And I see like 24 of my students, what are you guys still doing here? And they're still practicing, and they love it. And we want to continue to do that. You know, we have after-school tutoring and everything. Imagine if we had all this after-school athletics and stuff where the gym remains open. So thank you so much. Please consider just amending the joint use agreement. Appreciate it.
That concludes. Okay, that concludes public comment. Thank you guys very much. Move on to approval of the minutes, January 29th, 2018. Does everybody else have a? Here. Motion's been made by Councilman Tinajero. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Palacio. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, let's move on. All right. So as you can see on the agenda, there is only one item that we're going to discuss. It has 2 bullet points, Godinas Fundamental High School and other joint use. And thank you, Councilman Vegas and the other council members that are here. Sal and David, we had talked about this at your council meeting, so it's great that we're going to address that. What we gave you is a packet. The school district gave you a packet. It is a draft summary of joint use agreements between Santa Ana Unified and the city of Santa Ana, so all of you should have this copy. So you can see there, it's been broken down by school site, shared at facility. Don't need to read the whole thing to you, but I just want to make note on the top. The D stands for district, the C is for city, B for both, and N for none. And so you can see all that we have as far as working together. So we've got a lot of things going on together. And then on the notes, it's just information. And thank you, Oren, for putting this together. We really appreciate this.
My pleasure.
And then the other item that you have in your packet is the Godinas Map. You should all have this as well. And you guys have a great picture up there. Thank you. We appreciate it. And then we gave you the aerial Photoshop in color.
I went all out.
Yeah. Well, so did you guys. Look at that. That's yours.
Oh, really?
You should ask how much that cost. Okay. So, and as you can see, the city, thank you to the city staff that brought this wonderful picture here. And it's a great picture. So thank you. And then the joint use, so everybody can see in the audience as well. So let's get started, and we're going to talk about Godinas first, because other joint use we can probably get through a little quicker. Mr. Villegas, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few minutes.
I'm going to have the staff pass out some information packets to all of you. This is what my council, what I passed out to the council last week.
Okay.
So just make sure everyone-
Councilman Diaz, will you please speak up so that I can hear you?
Trying to talk this way.
Okay, then.
Yeah. So this is what I gave the council last week. This explains what what is used by, the school at any time, and also, what is public. I'll give you a minute to look through this.
And we apologize if you can't hear. Please wave at us so we'll speak louder. I have a very booming voice, but maybe others do not. So please wave if you can't hear us and we will speak louder.
Just wanted to make sure there were some clarifications on this, because I know there's some misconceptions about whether the school pays the money that actually goes to the city or goes to the school itself, paying itself for the use. And so I brought this forth to make sure that it's clear what, who is paying for what, and what belongs to the city and what's open to for recreational use only. Is there anything you want to add, Jeannie?
Just really quick for everybody's frame of reference, as Councilmember Villegas stated, this was passed out at the last council meeting. But as you can see, there's an attached partnership report update. And this is due to the fact of the last January policy joint use meeting that we had at the city facilities. And it was asked of staff to do this. We did, and we took it to the technical advisory so they could review it. After that, we took it to the Youth Education Community Services Council meeting on April 23rd. After that, we took it to our board meeting on the 25th of April. And now it's before you. If you have time, we could present this to you. If not, it's here. But basically, it outlines what the joint use efforts are with the city and school district, which we're really happy with. You know, we service the same kids, the same public. The last 5 years, we've had 15.4 million different projects that we did at Garfield, Willard, and Roosevelt Walker. It's gonna be opening it up on the 25th. That's a big news for the community of Santa Ana. You know, not just for the city, not just for the district, but the entire community in Santa Ana. We are also prepared to talk about this map if you want me to, and also the bullet points that you have in front of you, and we also have copies. But basically, it's just showing you that the green portion is park land and park recreational. The yellow portion is educational.
So Jenny, let's go back. So this is a report, and we really appreciate this. So we'll go back to this because it's not the first item is
Yes.
Godinas. So we're gonna talk just about Godinas, if we can, please. And you said you have copies of the Godinas joint use?
Well, we actually have copies of these
The
bullet
bullet
points
point
right
Right,
here.
the
and the
bullet,
summary.
that's what we want.
And the
And we
summary.
also have a summary, a two-page summary of the Godinas joint use permit. And Juan is passing them out. So basically, after 6 p.m., the city gets to use it, and on the weekends, school district from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Godinas. Yes.
Can you, we have Mr. Church here, can you talk about the summer months and what's the impact of the summer months? There's some exceptions to that we get charged. Can you explain what we get charged for and don't?
Okay, I don't have my notes specifically regarding the charges. And first of all, let me begin by saying, as I said at the city council meeting, thank you so much, city council, for even welcoming me to have a conversation. I think what we have here is just, I don't want to say a miscommunication, I just don't think we've caught up. I'm a former social science teacher. You know, we started off when the colonists came over, they did the Children's Agreement. They went to the Mayflower Compact, and they went to the Articles of Confederation, and they get to the Constitution. I think as it relates to Godinas, I'm well aware of all the language. I read the joint use agreement many times. I've read the synopsis many times. But for me as a principal, the school has evolved. The community has evolved. And so for me as a manager of the site, it becomes very difficult for me to, well, the joint use agreement as it's written with the fiscal structures belong belonging to the city, and I understand that part, because that's part of joint use agreement on the land. But let me talk about how difficult it is for me to manage the facility. Many times, no one's at fault, it's just how it's worked out. Say the city sent something prior to maybe 4 months ago, before even I ruffled some feathers on my end to try to centralize communication. Say someone in the community wanted to reserve the gym. They would check the gym, is someone using it? No. And then they would reserve it. Then someone would send me an email saying the church needs someone there tomorrow morning to have the scoreboard set up, have the bleachers rolled out, to have the volleyball nets taken down. I will get that email at 5 o'clock. Question one is, who am I gonna get to get there? Who's gonna pay that person? That has never been addressed. Say, for example, we have an event in the theater. For example, Christmas, someone utilized the theater, and everyone did what they thought was correct and followed the current policy. Say someone outside reserves the theater, and you look on the calendar and it says, well, I'm making these dates up. It's available December 26th. Even though we may not be using it on the 26th, we may plan on using it on the 29th, but we have the stage already set up. We have the props out. So the city reserves it. You need someone to work the soundboard. Who's gonna work the soundboard? Who's gonna do security? Who's gonna do custodial? Those questions have never been asked, but those problems come to me. Whether it's the city reserving it, whether it's Dr. Phillips and her cabinet hosting an event there, whenever there's something bad, they call me. They call the principal. Everyone wants to know what happened. And so I just like to try to have, if we could just amend the joint uses where we could control both the gym, the theater, and the parking structure. That would help the district out tremendously. Helping us out is helping the community out, which is helping the city. For example, say we have a volleyball tournament we want to do with CIF on Saturday. It's really not cost effective for us to do that because we have to pay custodial, we have to pay DSOs, because those are all union and it's contractual. We have to pay them a minimum amount of hours, but we can't charge for the parking lot. You don't make money doing CF events unless you can charge at the parking lot. For example, we can't even make money in our concession stands because we don't have a sink there. So I'm in the process of getting a sink installed. The question is, who pays for that? I do, it comes out of my budget. The refrigerator in both the gym and in the theater, as well as the ice machines respectively, those broke down. I can say, well, we can sit back and go toe to toe with the city, but my kids, my parents aren't being serviced. So we just like to have control of that. In no way am I suggesting that that land doesn't belong to the city. I'm saying it's the control of those respective facilities. I don't have a problem, although it's outside of my pay grade to negotiate that. Of course we want that partnership because our school without the park, without the city, impacts this community. And we all know it's about those kids. But I want to sit down and talk about a policy that can be revisited, can be amended, where cooler heads can prevail. Because even with us, a lot of times, as I'm doing the summer months now, I'm doing my planning for next year. What I don't want to do is be disingenuous to the community. I don't want to look at the gym and say, it's booked. Because that's not fair to our constituents. Particularly when we have a bond measure that we're trying to put on the June ballot. At the same time, the city is looking at least what I got from the last meeting, a sales tax. So we want our constituents to be happy. But I don't want to be greedy and block off everything. And so I've had nothing but problems. On some examples, we have the city, and they're not, and I say the city, not so much as us against you, but the city may say, well, Mr. Church, we're gonna reserve that gym on Saturday from 8 to 8. We're gonna clean it ourselves. So then when our kids come in on Monday, they're taking pictures. You know, there's Gatorade all over the floor, there's gum on the floor. Our PE kids come in, now they're upset. From the PE teachers to their representatives, to the assistant superintendent, to the superintendent, they call me, Mr. Church, what happened? Our kids aren't being serviced, what kind of school are you running? Well, let me get back to you, let me get back to you. I don't wanna call the city. Or what about security? If you have 500 people in the gym, who's protecting our windows from being scratched? Who's protecting our gym from being played on with dress shoes? No one. And that's the issue that I'm faced with at Godinas. I can't speak on behalf of the entire joint usage with the district. I'm not even prepared to do that, and I'd be remiss if I tried to do that. And I just want to really stick to the joint usage as it relates to Godinas. And I think if we sit back, and even if you look at here, and if I can use one of you guys as props, get you to look at picture guess we're gonna call this Exhibit A, if you don't mind. If you look on there, and you look at, if you look down, look to the right, you see that big space right behind the athletic field? We're gonna refer to that as the gym. Look to the left, that's the theater, then there's the parking structure. So if you look at the football field, look at the rectangular, if we're going horizontally, that's the gym, and then that's the theater. We don't have a perimeter gate over there. We can't put it there because that belongs to the city. So when our PE kids are outside, and they do run around the park, if we were to have a lockdown, we would lock our kids out. We've had about 9 burglaries that I know of as of date inside the parking structure. I don't have the right to put a gate up there. I don't have the right to put a keypad there. So our campus is beyond porous. And so I just think it makes sense. So go back to my refrigerator. Go back to my soundboard that's cost me $26,000. Yes, I got the language, and I'll need that for you guys to work out. Yes, we collect money, we do this, we do that. But how long that process, when it gets back to my campus, I don't have a soundboard if all my lights are out? Who fixes those lights? Our sound man works for SAUSD. He also covers the theater when SAUSD people reserve the theater, and when you guys reserve it. I don't have a problem being honest. He's clocked well over 634 hours overtime.
I'm sorry, how much?
634 hours overtime this year working the theater, because no one else can do it. And so then he has to call in sick at some point, and guess when he calls in sick? On my dime. And so we don't even have the ability to have an impromptu theatrical rehearsal. Yes, I know that we should calendar things, but as you guys know, when you look at the testing schedule, you look at from his SATs, you look at the college prep courses, you look for college applications, you look for parent nights. Sometimes I find myself not having access. The best example I have, assuming that everyone has kids, say you bought your daughter or son a house, and you've been gone for 10 years, but it's still your house. Then you call and said, hey honey, I'm having a party next week. And you just come in and throw a party. And then you leave. But she still has that house. Whereas we just had a nice conversation to talk about. I have no problem doing a walkthrough at any time. Just so you really get the feel, the frustration that I have. Thank you.
Councilman Villegas?
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Jurado, can you address the parking and why they can't charge?
Well, the parking structure is part of the park area, which is in green. Tetra Park parking structure, so you are correct. It is part of the joining, part of the park. It's in the agreement. Thus, that means that the National Park Service has stated that all this should be recreation. Okay, which includes the track and field, basketball courts, performing arts theater, gymnasium, baseball field, joint use runners. That's it. But I wanted to clarify something. Field 5 and 6, is this part of this agreement one? No, right? And Oren knows this. It's not part of this. So if the school wants to use field 1, 2, 4, 3, or 5 or 6, that is correct. You do get charged. Okay? So I want to clear that up. Okay? But if the school district, Godinas in particular, wants to use basketball courts, the performing arts theater, the gymnasium, you don't get charged for that. And you do get priority.
Can you say that one more time? I apologize.
If the school district, Godinas for example, wants to use the performing arts theater, gymnasium, the basketball courts, anything in here, they do not get charged whatsoever. If we want to use the gymnasium, which wants the sports, youth sports are under one, they do get charged, right, to do that. Okay?
Just so for clarifications for the public.
Not for the use of the facility.
So the parking structure is on the land that was given to us by the federal government, and we're restricted.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And that's why we can't allow anyone to charge, is that correct?
The way the agreement is stated right now, yes.
Say that last part again?
And I would like to, I want to help you guys, but there's some other things that, it ties our hands on certain things that, and this, for one, caught my attention because I was talking to Ms. Amezcua earlier, and, I'm like, well, I don't understand why we can't allow, for the school to charge, what would make sense to help the school district out. But this comes up.
And just to
So let me
you
ask a
know-
question, because you made a comment. You said, at this time.
Okay, the way the.
So is there a way to go back and change that? How long has that been in place?
Since the agreement was.
So for how long?
2002, I believe, right, Oren?
Yes.
And so is there a way to go to the federal government, to contact them and say, because of the changes within our city and the school district, is there a way to change this?
It would be something that, the council would direct staff to do.
So you
know,
can go
right?
back and,
You all have to discuss that if you want to direct staff to do that, but we would have to ask them.
right, but I'm saying,
We can't
if
send
the
it.
council directed you to, then you can go back and approach that issue, correct? Okay.
So, question for, when we had graduation, remember when the stadium wasn't ready, we were charged to use the park. That area that's on, where the stadium is and we were charged to use that.
What area? We use,
So-
Where this-
we use all that.
This is not part of joint use. Joint use is the white.
No, but we were charged to use the park to do the football fields that we built.
Good point.
The track-
And the
track
parking
field.
structure.
Yeah.
And the parking structure.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring in now Mr. Enrique Malban. He's our reservations supervisor. And I also want you to talk about our process for any special events. Because my understanding is that we always, or the third party pays for the theater and the stage manager, right? If you could please.
Hi.
So just so you know, the district paid $250,000.
Okay, I would say then, I guess, to answer the first question, what, and I believe, and there's some paperwork that we would have to research to make it available to you guys again, but our agency co-sponsored any fees for the graduations, so there were no fees charged. Now, by my guidelines, I have to assess a fee till the co-sponsorship process comes in. Just like any organization that comes in and says, I want to borrow this field, I have to assess the fee that's approved by the miscellaneous fee schedule. So originally, there's always a fee assessed. There was an application submitted for co-sponsorship. Well, we co-sponsorship all fees for the park, and then I believe Senate PD also co-sponsored all those fees. I understand there might have been some additional fees for the rentals or anything like that you guys took, but as far as park fees, there wasn't any charges actually paid for.
That's not true. That's not true. The co-sponsorship occurred after the school district questioned why we were being charged when the city cost us $250,000 because of the construction delays of the stadium. Okay? We actually paid part of the fees up front before we questioned the overall charge. Is that fair?
That's correct. And in addition, the co-sponsorship of the police department, that didn't happen. I was told that that was not a possibility. So for the record, I want everyone to know that the police services we did pay for.
So I thought we got it for free at the end of the day.
That the police
So
services.
it was like 10,000, do you know if it's $10,000 roughly?
I have to get you that number, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay.
So I do have a question for clarification. Are we discussing here retroactively that the graduation and the reuse of Godinas for that, or are we talking about the needs that were presented today? Because
We were
I'm
just
confused now.
raising the issue that we do get charged when we used our own facilities. We were charged, and that was the whole question, because we wouldn't have been at Centennial if it wasn't the way the stadium was remodeling occurred.
So this is the reason for the meeting, right?
Yeah.
So let's just, maybe I can clarify it, and I could be wrong, so anybody can jump in. We wanted to meet, because one, we scheduled this meeting, but two, we really just want to talk about how we can work together to assist Godinas and to make it work for our community. So for safety, security, fees. So yes, there's history here, and graduations, co-sponsored, police fees, we get all that. So for moving forward, we'd like to discuss how can we make this work now? Does that clarify?
Can I add something if you don't mind? Sure. We've already seen the split if you don't mind. You look nice, by the way. Just for the sake of focus for me. Thank you for addressing the parking structure. So let's put that aside. I don't want to forget about the theater and the gymnasium. That there, I would like to get resolved.
Yes.
For example, I believe there is an event happening that I know I just approved for a celebration, right, 500 athletes?
Yes.
The gym, it makes sense that the park has an incredible youth organization that does basketball. They'd like to have a closing ceremony. Question 1 is, who's gonna open the gym? Question 2, who's going to close it? Question 3, who's going to clean it? Question 4, who's going to man it? Question 5, who's gonna do the scoreboard? Question 6, if the scoreboard, when someone sets the scoreboard up, who's going to operate it? That has never been addressed. And so what has happened recently, we say, okay, well, you have to pay custodians. If you have a weekend, the custodian's not coming for 2 hours if they live in Riverside. So you need a custodian for 4 hours. But what custodian is gonna work from 6 to 8, then come back at night from 6 to 8? What if they don't show? What if they call in sick? So it makes sense for us to control that part. What about our stage? Here, the stage manager would come because he would have to set the microphone. He had to take down the microphone. You want the bleachers rolled out. You want the bleachers put back in. You want paper towels restocked. You want toilet paper restocked. You want access to the concession stand. You want ice in the concession stand. Who controls all of that? Since the beginning, and I happen to be at Godinas doing the 2nd year, so I'm very familiar with the joint use. At that time, we only had 700 kids. So these problems weren't a major problem. But now, for me, it's about operations and control of that. Yes, I know it's the city's land. I do want to go back on the statement that you did make, as the joint agreement is written now, which suggests, I'm a revenue major, suggests that we can revisit that, perhaps rewrite it, and that may take some time. But that's something we can do. I think that helps the community. Just imagine if, hypothetically speaking, every time there's a CIF championship, we can hold first or second round. Imagine when there's basketball, girls and boys, we can host first round or second round. As it stands now, when they talk about modern day doesn't say they're from Santa Ana. They say we modern day Orange County. But when we say Godinas, we say Santa Ana Godinas. Imagine the traffic that we can get in by being able to do that. I wanted to spend, obviously not today, but I would love to have this conversation, continue to have this conversation over control of this. Now, since we did talk about fees, we have a very robust athletic program, which I think is good. When we have football games over here, that's lower level, JV and frost salt, we have to pay for that usage. When we have soccer games, we have to pay for that usage.
Mr. Church, may I ask you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, how much do you pay?
That I don't have.
Roughly,
that
like
number.
roughly? Per, like if you had a baseball game?
I think it's something, I wanna say, is it $12 an hour or
It's
something?
It's $3.84 an hour for this, and it's approximately $4.54 for any use of this field per hour.
And I just know that on average, we write a check for about $20,000. Now, granted, I know, and I don't wanna get into the nuances.
No, I
of
just
the
wanted to
language,
know how-
But we write that check. But like I said, I'm not prepared to talk about this. Okay, because here, we also know too that because it is a park, we don't get to control usage on the weekend, we don't get to control usage after school. The conditions here aren't even playable for a low level game. So then we have to go over to Carr and to Valley, and we have to pay for a bus. I just signed off on a budget yesterday for my athletic budget, looking at it. We know that over here, there are 2 fields. This field here, I think we will agree that's probably not the safest field to play. It's full of dirt. Now, we won't play a soccer game there. We won't play a lower level football game there. So even though we have access in this close proximity to where our athletes are in our locker room, we still have to pay for a bus to go to Valley.
Thank you very much.
Got a question?
Sure, Ms. Reyes.
Question for my staff, Ms. Hurado, if you can address our obligation with the federal government regarding the land, so it's in our possession, what guidelines or what is it that we have to do?
So just-
I know there's a lot of details, and what's our obligation when we open something up like this when it comes to like the gym?
So in particular.
Can you hold on
for
one
this
second?
one-
I apologize.
I was just wanting to say, do we still need Mr. Marvan present?
Yes, because
Okay,
I'm gonna
okay, just,
probably ask
sure.
him a couple of questions. Godinas, you have a copy for me. City property, recreational purposes only, which I already stated. The deep condition is monitored by the National Park Service, right? It's for recreational joint use. Sports fields, courts, gymnasium, performing arts, and parking. Structure on city property, which we spoke about. District property, educational purposes only, for academic facilities, classrooms on district property. Now conflicts, we're talking about that currently, right? What do we do when there's conflicts or scheduling of joint use area? Well, we have monitored by the Technical Advisory Committee. We meet with the school district on a monthly basis, right, Oren? The director, the manager on our side, and Mr. Enrique Marban, and then on your side, who's on your side?
Myself, Manoj has joined the team, and John Wysocki.
And over the years, that has tremendously helped we resolve issues at those meetings, so that it doesn't get to this. So we're ready, we're willing to help, and we go back and work this out and come back next time. The district use of joint use areas during school hours 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. as stated before. No charges for use of joint use area. The district pays city fees for use of city park area. City use of joint use area after school and weekend. District has a priority. Use of fields, facility during city time, and at no charge by the city. Third party users are charged fee and monies are sent to the district, and we review it on a monthly basis. We both look at it, what we owe you, and vice versa. And we are on, right now I think we're current. I think we are kind of there. Both sides.
I also want to say that any third-party reservation, even our own reservations, we ask for a 45-day notice. So once we get the application, 45 days, it should, obviously because of the time frame, it takes us about 3 to 4 days to notify your district contact. In the past, it used to be an on-site person by the name of Pro Raya. Now it's been Mary Binninger with Civic Center. So that's normally our process. Again, we ask for 45-day notice so that we can say, hey, is your gym available? Is your amphitheater available? Sometimes the answer is yes. Okay, then we proceed. If the answer is no, then we go back to the third party and say, unfortunately, it's not available. It's being used for an activity. We just actually recently declined 3 to 4 events because they weren't available. Again, and we hope that the 45 days gives us enough time. Again, in working with district, we can make it longer if that's what you're looking for. But again, we try to pre-plan as much as possible.
So let me interject. First of all, excellent presentation. But you would agree that even that implementation for scheduling didn't happen until I started that process about 4 months ago.
I would disagree with you, sir. We've been doing that since I've been there almost 5 years. Before I got there, it was already there.
So I've received 3 emails in the past 3 days requesting facility usage within the next 10 days.
I would encourage that you ask your staff, the district staff, when did they receive notice? I can't control when they notify you.
I can answer that.
I can only control when I notify
for
her.
you. A city person says, you know what, say me, I would like to use Godinas' gym. I'll put in a request. I may not respond to that in a week or 2 weeks, particularly now during graduation. So people do know me, they know my email. Mr. Church, have you checked on Civic Center? Then I check on Civic Center, oh, there's an event, they want in 2 weeks. That's how we were talking about the basketball tournament or the closing ceremony.
That request went in 3 months ago, sir. I apologize if you barely got notice. I followed up with that person the last 45 days, at least 3 to 4 different times. Unfortunately, again, I have to be the responsible.
So with that, we didn't identify who's gonna open it, who's gonna close it. Are you gonna have custodial support, or are you gonna have DSO coverage? I read it prior to coming to this meeting.
So thank you, Mr. Church, because that was going to be my question. So, and I appreciate it.
If I could just finish the last one?
Yeah, go ahead,
So
and then
know
I
it's
have a
very
question.
important for all of us.
Yes.
Regarding security, it was brought up at the last council meeting. We are proposing the Santa Police Department and the District Police to meet and discuss methods to ensure student safety. That is number one. So security methods will be reviewed by the Technical Advisory Committee, Oren. We could review that and then come back to you.
So we have Chief Smith here. I think she's going to talk in a few minutes about the security issue. But I'd like to talk about exactly what Mr. Church is bringing up. And I don't know who's going to answer, but the fact that if you're having let's just use the example Mr. Church brought up. And thank you, Mr. Church. The 500 people coming, families, kids, roll out, bleachers, open, close. Parking, security, all those things. So can you tell us who pays for that?
The perfect example is for this coming Saturday, which is the event, is Mary Benninger, who's my contact person, she's charging me 9 hours of DSO and 9 hours of custodian. That's for this coming Saturday. So we, the city, after the event, will get billed by somebody from the office, and then we'll pay for that.
I'm sorry, 9 hours of DSO, 9
9
hours?
hours of DSO and 9 hours of security. I'm sorry, DSO and 9 hours of custodial services.
For custodial, so that, no security?
DSO is security, district.
But no
security.
police from you guys, from your end?
No.
You're not having police then?
We normally notify the park ranger, so our park ranger, our system, consistently goes by and just makes sure everything's.
And you have one part-time park ranger for the entire city, correct?
One full-time, one part-time.
One full-time and one part-time for the entire city of Santa Ana?
That's correct.
Okay. Chief Smith, you wanna talk about security for that, please?
Where would you like me?
You can come up here.
Do you have a question? I'm sorry.
Well,
Wait.
my question was,
I
Mrs.
still have
Church
a question.
continues to talk about scoreboards and who's operating, who's taking down, so we talked about DSO and custodial, but his question goes unresolved with respect to who's gonna do those other supporting.
Again, normally after Mary Benninger tells me, yes, this date's available, usually the response is, tell me what you need. So we send an email, a list of items we need. Example is, we need the bleachers out, we're gonna need 2 of the baskets down, and we need the scoreboard. For something like the gymnasium, that's normally the way it is. The scoreboards are very universal, so the same type of scoreboard that's at the Santa Ana Stadium is I'm 95% sure it's the same scoreboard that's at the school itself. As you know, a lot of our staff are college students who are very technological savvy. They know how to, I tell my 10-year-old, here's my iPhone, figure it out for me, because I'm still not as good as I should be. But that's what it is. So same thing for the soundboard, for example, is we charge that third-party user, or if it was us, we expect the bill. It all goes back to you guys. Again, how it's on-site managed, I don't see myself telling Principal Church, hey, I need you to have this person there because I like him better than this person, or this coach is we work better with this coach than with this coach. How everybody handles scheduling, that would be a question for the on-site staff.
And the stage manager is paid by the third party for the duties.
So Chief Smith, before you go, Councilman Tinajero?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for coming out and explaining, I need you guys up there. So, a little bit, going back a little bit to all this, is that I was pretty upset with our previous city manager and the way that things were handled when it came to the graduations. And the reason for that is, somewhere, someone did not communicate effectively and give the district a timeline that we were having problems until it was way too late. By that point, the school district had to spend a tremendous amount of money, which, takes away from kids. So, Councilmember Benavides, myself, and other council members in the city went and basically explained to the city manager that we needed to help the school district. We were all for helping the school district. In fact, we have something called discretionary funds. And I don't know if Councilmember Benavides remembers, all of us gave, I think it was like $1,000 of our discretionary funds to help pay for this stuff. But because our staff approached it in a very bureaucratic manner, it created some hurt feelings along the way. That if we were true partners, why are we doing this? So you explained the procedure and so forth. What I see here, quite honestly, is not so much any negative, in other words, the city nor the school district is approaching this in a sinister manner. What I see is a breakdown in communication, effective communication, that's going to allow for us to work together as a team. That's why we're at this meeting. I think the people sitting at this table want to create solvency, but we also have to take a look at what has occurred in the past so that we can get it out, talk about it, get it over with, and move on. And so I just wanted to bring that up. The other item, 2 items that I want to ask questions about is somewhere down the road, we're going to have to talk about security, and I know that you're gonna give a presentation on that. When I was on the other side, when I was on the school board back in 2002, and I was on this side advocating for the school. One of the things that was agreed to reluctantly, I didn't really want to agree to this, but it was agreed to, that there would be no fence around the school. So that right there is the elephant in the room that we have to really discuss. One of the questions that I want to ask, I have been told that the school district pays, the school district pays the city money, a big check, for usage, okay? At the last council meeting, that was rebutted, okay? So right now, I don't know what the actual account is. I would like to get our city staff and the school district to come together to give me the proper information on that, whether there is money going to the city or not going to the city for that joint use. So if I can get that, that'd be great. The other question I have is, when you have an event, like Saturday, what event is gonna happen?
It's our girls' youth sports basketball championships.
Okay, so we have DSOs there that you are paying for, correct? We have one DSO or?
And, excuse me, and that came in because I went through my emails. I said, well, wait a minute, we short on staff. And I can tell you how Mr. Zumito at that time, contact Mary and said, wait, we need DSO coverage. Not only do we need one, we would need two for 500, because the DSO is also gonna be the eyes and ears inside. But what about the periphery of the school, particularly the parking lot, right? As well as you guys know, in the front of our school, that's all red. It's triple parked. Buses sometimes can't get in. And so we have to be out there. And we also have custodial. And again, this is where the miscommunication. I think this all makes sense. That we can sit down and talk about how to best do it. I think it's getting better. But contrary to what you stated, and I'm not questioning your veracity, I'm just talking about the communication. I said, I had June 7th. The district, Santa Ana's, I'm not gonna say what I don't want the youth to be in the gym. So I was like, man, do I have DSO coverage? They want a scoreboard, who's gonna set the scoreboard up? Contrary to, yes, our kids are intelligent. I have kids, I'd like to believe that both of them are intelligent, but running a scoreboard is different at every school. What we can't have happen is a malfunction. And then we have a tournament next week, we don't have a scoreboard. And so we need people there operating that. What about the vending machines? What about opening and closing the concession stands? What about the temperature for the spritzer spray inside of the gym? Who knows how to turn that on and turn it off? What about the custodial support? These are all simple things, but part of logistics.
And that's why my next question was going to come to who manages the event. So if we have an event, a city event, and you have a DSO there, who is the point person for the city that's managing the event?
For example, for this coming event is America Robledo, who's a full-time staff, a program coordinator, a long-time staff for us, approximately I would say 18 to 20 years. One of her, as council member, as you may remember her, she's one of the key points in the sports programming. She's there physically herself. She's the key person. She manages the event herself. She's very good. Like I said, we consistently have this event twice a year. So she's very familiar with that area already. But again, we manage, in addition to her, we have the entire, about 10 additional part-time staff to help. Because we have events, we have a trophy presentation, a basketball game going on, and obviously we help monitor as best as we can regarding the other use or non-use of the facility itself. So we try to help with the parking issues like you mentioned. We try to help with the restroom areas as best as possible.
So Councilman Tinajero brought up a very great point, thank you, that we don't need to keep meeting to discuss this. I think when we give direction to our staff and you give direction to your staff to say, you need to sit down and work this out. And Mr. Church earlier when he began to speak, he stated how much the school has grown, the activities that are happening. Santa Ana Unified we're blossoming. Like we're on our campus. He's probably there till 8 o'clock every night. We have activities all the time, and so that's where the communication needs to come in. And it cannot be at the level where, we find out, just a few days, and it's no disrespect to anybody, but there needs to be very clear communication between both sides, so that we have activities going on at the school, and you guys have activities. The field that Mr. Church brought up that cannot be used because it needs to be replaced. I mean, so when you guys get together, talk about how we can replace that. together, right? So there's a lot of things that as the technical advisor committee, you can come together and agree to, and I would ask that you invite Principal Church to be there, because that's his school, that is his community, those are his parents and his students, and he could probably stand up here for the next 2 hours and talk about the needs of Godinas. So I would really ask that if it's okay with the Raul and council members, that we invite Principal Church to that meeting, so that he can also be at the table having this discussion with you. And then I know Mr. Palacio wants to say something, and then Chief Smith, you can go.
And Mr. Lara has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see you back. I
That's
apologize.
okay, no problem.
David, get out of my way.
I just wanted to emphasize again just how much we value the partnership and how much we've been trying to work, with the district as a whole and with Godinas specifically to improve the process. Please do understand that any school-related programming has priority. We will never bump any school-related programming for a city reservation. So I want to reiterate that, since Mr. Church came on board, and the shift happened between us approaching with our request, Ms. Peroraya. Now the requests are going to Mary Berenger. As Enrique stated, our expectation is to get those requests in as soon as possible and with a minimum of no more than 40 days. We get it within 45. We do our best to get those processed on our end between 3 and 5 days. So then we submit them to Mary, and we don't do anything until we hear back from Mary. And when she tells us, yes, it's available, we proceed, whether it be a city programming or a private rental. But again, neither city nor private rentals will ever take precedent over school programming, because school programming still takes preference even during city time at those facilities.
Quick example, when the shift did change where Ms. Peroraya was not in charge of it any longer, was Mary. We met with Oren at the different advisory, and we also invited Mary after the second meeting, right? And we spoke to her, because we're there to problem solve, We're there, we want this to run smooth, because we value her.
Yeah, we're going to talk about security, and then Mr. Palacio and Dr. Heatley has.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chief Smith.
Okay, thank you, President Meswith, Superintendent Phillips, board members, and city council members also so much for including our perspective and the issues that you're taking into consideration tonight. Putting aside the joint use discussion and the dialogue about how maybe that can be improved going forward, I'd like to specifically talk about the security issues that we see at Godinas and at other joint use facilities that are within Santa Ana Unified School District. And at these joint use facilities, what we see are concerns with specific areas that, along with Orrin Williams and our school police team, we have looked at these areas, and those are single point of entry, and Principal Church has talked about the vulnerabilities at his campus, adequate perimeter fencing, which controls, ingress and egress on the school sites, security cameras, lighting, all of those issues. So when you're talking about Godinas in particular, because we don't have the fencing that secures the athletic facilities, we are right there vulnerable. And this is an issue that doesn't stop and start during the school day. I know typically everybody thinks about active shooter incidents happening during a traditional school hours, but active shooter can happen at night at a basketball event. It can happen at night when you're having a celebration in a theater. You don't know what people's motivations are. And so that draws a significant amount of concern for us with respect to, are you truly providing security when you're assigning a DSO to a large-scale event that's attracting a crowd of 500? I would represent to you that you are not. They are a presence. They are there as a function to facilitate the attendees. Where are the restrooms? Can you help me? We have a lost child. There's a missing purse. They facilitate if there's any concerns. And yes, in fact, they will notify Santa Ana Unified School Police via dispatch if they need additional officers to respond on site. But that doesn't take into account whether my officers are already tied up at an incident at another school. So looking at these events, when you have anywhere from 100 to 500 or more attendees, do we really have adequate personnel on site if there were an issue like this, if there were a large-scale fight. I know the standards generally for special events, having worked that in previous assignments, is usually an assessment of 50 to 1. Usually you're talking about one armed officer on scene for about 50 attendees. And that is not something that we're currently taking into consideration with all of these. It's something I'm just bringing to your attention as a concern that we have as school police. Obviously, we work very closely with Santa Ana Police Department. I speak with Deputy Chief Gaminsky several times a week, and we coordinate on the other community-wide issues. These joint use facilities, because they are not secured by fencing and single point access, we have concerns about nearby transient issues, the homeless population. Parents have concerns about their children being safe going to and from these areas. Significant concerns were raised by community members just having the athletes jog through the park, for cross country. That occurs everywhere at schools throughout the U.S. Cross-country runners go out and they are running through the city streets. But there are some unique concerns here for Santa Ana, and that is because of the impact that we've seen with the homeless in these types of areas. And Principal Church raised an important issue as well, is if there were a lockdown and those kids are off-site, then the lockdown's gonna have to occur in the inner perimeter area that he can secure.
Can you show that, please?
And you'll have to assist me because I'm not an expert. So right now, when you come to Godinas, he can secure the gate that goes to his main office. And it was, and I should point out too that while he's demonstrating where your locks are, I should point out two important things that our district did on behalf of assessing school site security and safety. On March 12th, we employed the services of the company to conduct what are called CPTED reviews. That stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And they were on site at Godinas, and they assessed the very areas I talked about: single point of entry, security fencing, perimeter control, lighting, security cameras, and also another factor which isn't an issue today, but that's lock blocks, securing the doors. That occurred district-wide through the month of March, and we have that report for Godinas. On March 29th, we submitted the overall district safety review that Orrin and Williams, his team, and school police and risk management worked on, which assessed those factors as well, so we could provide our board with a very comprehensive review about here are all the issues that we potentially identified, and here are the related costs. So significant for Godinas, obviously, is the fact that none of this is secured. And when you have kids out here running around the track, going through drills at baseball or football, if there's a lockout, or what we see really more frequently in Santa Ana are lockouts. So Santa Ana PD could be conducting an operation in a surface street nearby. Maybe they're stopping a vehicle where armed subjects are in the vehicle. They make a courtesy notification via our dispatch and say, and they're doing this in a very timely, quick manner, just in an abundance of caution, put your school in lockout mode. That's in case any of the subjects that are in these vehicles bolt from the car and they have guns and they want to head towards the school, right? So we do a lockout to say nobody can come in, the teachers, the principals are protecting these kids. What do we do to protect these kids? We're vulnerable in that area, and we know that we're vulnerable in that area. So now we've done a lockout and these kids are out there. If the suspects are running through, they have access to that field. And again, with the special events, the ratio of the population, the numbers attending these events with security on site, I know we try to communicate regularly with our DSOs to remind them of safety protocols. But as Principal Church pointed out, if they're trying to watch the crowd at a stadium event, who's watching all the vehicles? And that's where we see problems. We have vehicle burglaries, tampering with vehicles, vandalisms. There just isn't enough people on site to absorb all of those responsibilities and put eyes on to all those vulnerabilities as an incident or a special event is occurring.
And Chief, could I add something else too?
Yes.
Just think about an average school day. We have a perimeter gate here. These are push exits. Up here is our parking structure. Second floor, here are doors. Think about our kids, many of your kids, that are jogging, and you have people using drugs in the restrooms. What am I going out there and seeing couples make out? What am I going out there and seeing a group of kids with 5 or 6 dogs? What about the issues at the skate park? We had a lockdown. I think I was at a principal's meeting on a Thursday, and there was something that happened that ended right in front of Taco Bell. So there was a soft lockdown. Did we lock our kids out, or did we lock our kids in? As the principal, I get all of those calls. I'm not complaining because I get those calls. It's because my son will be attending Godinas next year, so it hits home. But I treat every kid as if it is my kid. And so we just want what's safe. So I know we went on a little bit, but imagine we could just have a perimeter gate somewhere out here where we can control our campus. Because as it stands now, this is all open. From the night school, there are no signs here that says no pedestrians allowed in the parks. Let's talk about some other complications since I do have the mic. Say, for example, on Saturday, this is the joint usage, and say there are soccer games or baseball games there, and say sprinkler heads are broken. Who repairs those sprinkler heads?
We do.
What about if the gate is all cut? Who repairs that? We do, because I get the complaints. I get the parents taking pictures. What about if there are beer cans? I know you said there's a park ranger. Is the park ranger handling the entire park? I don't even talk about the safety concerns at the skate park, because we see the vandalism associated with the water tower being repaired. So what I'm asking isn't unreasonable. I just think that if we can sit down, and to me, there's no friction here. It's about using common sense. And I come to the table with an olive branch. I want to make it happen and make it safe for our kids, because that's safe for the city, not safe for everybody.
It truly is about increasing awareness, and I think the fact that we're all together here sharing the different scenarios, the different vulnerabilities, the capabilities, and the issues that they present. Again, we work collaboratively with Santa Ana PD, but when these issues occur at a special event on a Saturday or a Sunday, it's usually gonna be school police that's responding there, because they'll say, well, that belongs to Santa Ana Unified. So you take the police report, right? And of course we take that police report because our goal is to best serve our school district, but really it is a joint concern, and it really could potentially be something that Santa Ana PD would also want.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Dr. Heatley, you have a comment, and then we'll go to Councilman Villegas.
My comment is we're talking about control over scheduling. And there's nothing I've heard this evening when we talk about Godinas, why the school system could not control that. If it's only scheduling, whether they call the city or call us, the process would be much smoother if it went through us, because they gotta check with us anyway. So we're cutting out some of the bureaucracy. And so again, everything I'm hearing makes a lot of sense. A lot of issues we have to continue to work on, but as far as the scheduling, I think that's something Mr. Church has asked for. Can they go through the school? And I think it should be the first point of contact, not the second.
And I think that's where the technical advisory committee can come in, instead of us sitting here as council and board members to make that decision, but that hopefully we can all direct the staff to work together, and with Raul's leadership, the city manager, he'll be there as well to see how we could work that out, and having Principal Church at the table. But I think that can be discussed. Councilman Villegas?
Yes, I want to say for the record, I'm 100% on board with securing this area, because it is open. It's right off the street. What the chief was saying, if you got an occupied vehicle, these guys, they run off the street. If you pull a car over, these guys run. You don't know if they got a gun or they're wanted for something. And they took off running, they're gonna run into the school, they're gonna run into this area where the truck is. If there's a way for us to help, put a fence, but at the same time, I'm trying to figure out exactly what our obligation is. Do we give up control on this during certain hours? Put a fence up, because we have to protect the kids that are attending here. I mean, these are our children we're speaking about. And what is our obligation on that? What comes to that?
Our obligation is to have it open.
Can you stand so that everybody can hear
I'm
you?
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Our obligation is to have it open for recreational use. That's what it is. But we are open to explore. I understand what you're saying, what the district is saying. Safety is number one, but that is our obligation. And we could come back to the technical and discuss and see what we could, come up with.
I have a question. I'm sure we can
And
go
I think
ahead.
Goran had a comment.
Hold on one second, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, okay, so you could fence it off a portion, because during school hours, the kids go out there, and so that's how I see we justify keeping that locked up until the time is up, and then, hey, we have to open it.
6 p.m. It's wide
6
open.
p.m., then we open it up for the public, because, you know, that is the agreement between us and the federal government
Yes.
for them
Yes.
to give us this piece of land. And if there's something else we can do regarding from the parking lot, there's access, you're saying, from the parking lot. I noticed that when I went to the school the other day, I was able to get right in. And so we gotta find a way to secure that also. But, you know, again, this is still landing on federal property
Yes.
that we're in control of, so, just trying to get to the nitty gritty of that.
And that's what I appreciate.
And that would be,
And
that's
because
part of my
there's
question
so many
too.
details, it's-
Yeah.
We need the staff to get together again.
Right.
I think Gordon, you have.
Yeah, hold on one second. So when he talks about the fence, that's what I
Yes.
asked, when you guys meet, make sure that we look at what are the regulations for the fence as far as, can we put the fence there? And again, then we could go back to them if we need to.
Yes, yes.
One of the things that we had looked at doing during, as the chief mentioned, our safety and security analysis of the district was to look at putting perimeter fences at schools that don't have them, but that could be locked open
Right.
for public use. And that's actually relatively easy. We'd use a rolling gate style, so you'd actually have very wide open areas to make sure the public knew that they were welcome in their usable time. But then that we could close it down so that Mr. Church has that secure perimeter that he's been talking
So
about.
can you explain what the roll-away fence is?
So we would actually have your typical gates anywhere where there's a passageway. But let's say if we just used, well, the biggest challenge is that Mr. Church, if I'm mistaken, correct me, but you use this section for PE as well, don't you?
We do.
And so that's part of where we get part of the charges that the school is actually charged, because they use this section as well for PE as well as the rest of the, it's a large school. And it's typically, you need that much acreage for a high school anyway. What we would suggest is maybe doing something along here, a decorative fence, that would be able to come along the perimeter, whatever would be amenable to the city. We don't want to destroy or damage anything that would allow for soccer use, because that large field is terrific for a lot of soccer facilities. So we'd come over here to around the perimeter, but then we'd be able to cross the street, or at least follow the edge of the street around, and then tie into the performing arts area. That actually gives us that perimeter that we're talking about. And then, again, for any walkways that go from like where the community college comes through, or residents come through, this walkway is very popular. Any of those gates, we provide smaller gates, larger rolling gates for sections where people from the parking lot would be able to walk into the park, unobstructed. So we could have some larger rolling gates along this section to be able to open up and give it a larger, more open appearance.
So our staff would roll them out in the morning, roll them back up at night, or they'd be up during the week?
That's part of the negotiation,
Right.
where we decide who needs to do it and when.
Oh, I'd like to be a part of that meeting.
Well, you'll be in the technical advisory.
That's part of the technical.
Right, so that's the big question, right? Who's gonna roll them in and roll them out?
But the suggestion is, before we go to the feds, we would have to have a diagram to be able to share with them, to say, hey, this is what we're proposing, and give them something to counter, to say, we would accept this, but you need to change that. So
Okay.
we
Thank
could come up with a diagram pretty simply.
Councilman Benavides?
Thank you, Ms. Amezcua. We've been hearing a lot of the points, the concerns, valid ones, I understand, presented by both the school principal, other school staff. And as we've been having a little bit of a sidebar, there have been various different issues or buckets, if you will, from scheduling. Where does it make sense? Who does it make sense to do the scheduling? What makes it so that it's makes it easiest and more logical? The logistics from the locking and scoreboards and just the cleaning and some of those things. And believe me, if I were to walk into a facility that I use on a Monday morning and it's has not been cared for the way at my level of expectation, which would be something to be clean, would be presentable to my students on a Monday morning 8 o'clock, I'd be ticked. So I understand that, and there's validity to some of these questions, concerns. Another is security from this issue. If there is an incident, out on the street, how is that addressed? Another is, I think I see it as different but related, is this issue of fencing, because we've addressed that. It's come up before. It's a sensitive issue. That's one of the other things to consider, and I'll come back to that. And then this other question about fees. So those are at least a few of the kind of buckets that I've seen. There's a few of them, and I think the approach is to try to address these maybe one at a time. I don't think necessarily tonight. I think a lot of that the technical advisory committee, I think, is who can work through at least highlighting, okay, what are the issues with regard to scheduling, what are the issues with regard to logistics. Are there simple fixes that can be addressed there that that are not policy level issues, that it's just a matter of communication and creating some type of easy way of working together? And then there might be some things, and there will be, based on the conversations that are being held or the issues that are being presented and ideas, some of those will be policy level. They will need to come back for council. And again, the fencing as a one point. And let's not forget that this is Godinas High School, which is a great school in itself. So congratulations, Mr. Church, on running a great school, having phenomenal students and outcomes. A number of those of your students are my students over at KidWorks, and they're doing some great, accomplishing some great things. It is Godinas High School at Centennial Park. So we've got to remember that this is a park, and it so happens to host a school. So those are some of the things that you're presenting. The district is presenting some of the issues from the district's perspective, which again, I understand the idea of fencing and how it would work best for the purpose of the school. The hat that I'm wearing, and I've got to wear, I was elected to wear, and that I need to represent, is the park side, is the community side. That has nothing to do with the school necessarily. Some of them are also, we serve the same students. Some of the families that might have their kids there who might have that interest as a parent. Not everybody in our community is a parent or is a young person. Some of the folks, they want to go and walk their dog at their park, and they're seniors and they're well beyond high school, and that's my responsibility and role is to look out for those folks too. And the issue of even the school being on the school site was very contentious years ago, and it continues to be. It continued to be when we allowed for the baseball field perimeter fence to go up. That was very tense. And one of my colleagues will mention there's a small minority that was vocal and that was I will very adamantly contend that that's not the whole case. That's not the story. I have kids that are school age, that are in Santa Ana schools. Not only do I represent when I speak about some of my concerns with regard to some of these other issues of fencing and even the scheduling, it's not just as an elected, but also as a community member, as a resident. I pay my taxes both to schools and to the city, and I want to make sure that the park is truly a park. And that the gym is generally recognized that it is on the park side of the land, and so I don't want to get into that conversation here. I'm just saying that there is another side that we will need to figure out. The other is, okay, so already 18 acres of parkland, I believe roughly, or at least some acreage, was essentially provided for the school district to build. That was, again, very contentious, very heated. Ultimately, that was a decision that was made. Many in our community do not agree with that decision, but that was a decision that made. The school was there at South Park. Later with regard to that perimeter fencing. So a number of members of our community feel that, hey, we already have given a lot, and now what's being asked for us is for us to give more, for us to have a lot of the word that's been using is control, for the school district to have control of the theater, for the school district to have control of the parking structure, for the school district to have control of the gym, and so what good is the reference mentioning of a house? If I own my house but I have no control of the house, somebody else has control of the house. It's no longer my house. I might pay the property taxes or something, but it's not mine. And so those are some of the things that we'll have to think about and wrestle through. If the city had abundant resources, those fields over there would not be in the deplorable shape that they're on. Honestly, I'm embarrassed that even some of your students would be using, they're really, it's not really a field, it's a dirt lot, out there, that field 2, I think, or 3. We don't have even the resources to fix that and maintain our own spaces to the point where they should be. So we also are strapped for cash. But let's figure out, and I think some of those, the scheduling, some of the low-hanging fruit, the scheduling perhaps, the logistics issues perhaps, the some of the maybe the fees, those are kind of low-hanging fruit that I think those, our staff are smart staff. They can sort through and figure out some of these things. Some of these other things are going to be a little more contentious, and we're going to have to figure out how do we, with cool heads, figure things out. I know John is just chomping at the bit to say something, I think, and appreciate the fact he's giving me a little bit. So, cool heads though, John, cool heads. We can both get a little heated, but it's just, but anyhow, and so if there are going to be additional gives, because that's the way I see it, and that's the way a lot of folks in my community are going to see it, my constituents. So what's going to be the gain for them? If we are going to potentially even allow fence, although I don't know at the national level whether they'll even consider allow that. But if there were going to be other things where there would be less control of the city for us to program, or then what are we going to go out to the residents, the community that's not school connected to the school, to say, hey, this is something that we're considering. There might be more control or more, the district might get a little more, but let us tell you what is going to be the gain for you. Maybe one of those fields is going to get addressed, or more than field, or something where there is going to be a win-win, and there's going to be something positive that we can all at the end of the day say, hey, there's been an exchange. At this point, there's a lot of asks of the city, and I understand the reasonable asks, but again, there's got to be something that we need to talk about that where the other side, the city and the residents, are going to be able to gain as well. So that's my point.
So before John chomps at the bit, I just want to piggyback on something you said, that you have to respond to your constituents. As a school board member, all 5 of us always hear about safety and security for our children. How safe is our schools? How safe are they? If there's a lockdown, right? Before even board members get notified, it's all over social media. And so then we're calling the superintendent's office saying, hey, we're hearing this or we're hearing that. San MPD's located, I believe, a couple dead bodies in the pond. And so, our kids are there, or, so I agree with you that we all answer to our constituents. And when we use the word control, believe me, we do not want to control everything. It's a lot of work for your staff and our staff. But I think we just want to get a handle of the reservation. So for example, Saturday's a great example. About 500 people with one DSO, as Councilman Villegas talked about. That is not safe, and Chief Smith even talked about it. That is so unsafe, and if something happens, who's liable? Whose property are they on? They're on the school district property, deep pockets, right? So if somebody trips or falls or gets hit by a car, we get sued. We get sued as a district and we lose money, right? So of course we have insurance, but the backlash from the community will be awful, right? Why didn't we have more DSOs? Why didn't we have school police there? And just so everybody knows, on Saturdays and Sundays, and Chief Smith, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have 2 officers on during the weekend, and 1 sergeant. And so that's not a lot of officers for the entire city and all of our schools. And so we don't want to control everything, but I think it's great that the technical advisory committee will come together and include Principal Church. I hope that the city will allow that, so that, because he's there and he knows what's happening and he can speak. I'm sure the superintendent will allow him to speak on our behalf to represent Godinas. And the school, again, I just want to point out before Mr. Palacio makes his comments, and after that, we're gonna close out, and because we don't want to be here too long, but I just want to say, because again, we always talk about, we are SAUSD and we're the city and we're partners in all this, But we really have schools like Godinas, and thank you for complimenting them. Godinas is doing phenomenal things on their campus, and they're always after school and on the weekends. And when the parents talk about, they've approached us, right, for a pool, and it's like, where can we put it? We're going to have the same conversation if that was to ever come up. Where can we put a pool? So I'm glad there's parents here to hear the city say, this is park land, right? Because that's going to be another conversation. This is park land. If we put a pool, is it open to the public? I mean, those are the things that we have to talk about. So I'm glad that we're at the table having this discussion. As board members and the council and the city manager here with us and all the staff, we really appreciate it. But we don't want to control everything. We really just want to have very clear communication. And we want to be mindful that we're serving our students. And if that means you just put signs all over the park that during this hour and that hour there's a school, or be whatever it is, I'll let the technical advisory committee come up with that. But that's why we're meeting. And so when they meet, then we'll come back here. And I know you're chomping at the bit, but he has something. Two seconds.
Just really quick. I went to high school in LA, in East LA, Boyle Heights, Francisco Bravo High School in Boyle Heights, right next to Hazard Park. It was a one-story, one building, 5-story school. We had no field. So we used Hazard Park right adjacent to it, right next to USC LA County Hospital. So our field was the park, and so running through any exercise, anything that was out there, and I recognized some of the issues and concerns. We walked through as our class, a lot of gang activity in the area. Literally gang meetings taking place 9 o'clock in the morning as we're walking, doing our PE. Some of the illicit activity by couples out there being a little friendly, towards each other. So I understand that reality, but we also recognized and understood that was the nature of going to this school. It was a one building, 5-story school. That's what we lived with then, back in the 90s, a while ago, and that's what that's what they're still dealing with today, and that's the nature of the school. So there are dynamics when you're, schools and where they're situated. So, that's.
And I would agree. The only difference there to us is that we're better council members and better board members who can come up with
That's right.
policy.
That's right.
I think there's a way for us to.
I agree. Mr. Palacio, when he's done, if there's nobody else, since we're going to close out.
I want to summarize this, but understand that as part of the Councilman Tinajero, I think Solano, you were part of the original agreement. And so we know the history. The district spent tens of millions of dollars to complete the park. Because at some point, when Tinajero was a young kid, he was playing in the dirt. Wasn't that dirt already? We finished the park on behalf of the city. It was dirt, okay? We spent tens of millions of dollars. In fact, we went even more than that, okay? Heritage Museum. As part of the deal, we had to fund the capital investments, improvements with the Heritage Museum. In fact, we had to give them operating money. Funds that we didn't have to. No one was around when I was around here in the 80s.
We're too young.
Yeah. I negotiated the park. That's why you see where the adult education center is? That piece of property is educational access, not recreational access, okay? Part of the district, where the district is, that is also part of the park. The agreement over the years, it has changed from the 80s to today. This whole park is educational and recreational access. Remember, the district spent tens of millions of dollars, so we actually, we built more than we had to, okay? Because we actually could have taken these in. In terms of property. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm gonna summarize what I heard, and I'll pass something. About 5 months ago, Jesse Church and his athletic directors and the PTAs and parents approached members of the school board, approached members of the council, Councilman Tinajero, Councilman Solorio, former Councilman Ted Moreno, President Amezcua, then Lee. And we kind of started talking about what is the issues that we can do. And so the partnership guidelines has to be shared maintenance, has to be shared capital investment, has to be shared capital replacement. That means you gotta replace it at some point, right? You just synthetic fuels in 10 years, you got 8 years, you gotta replace it. Shared revenue, and to look at alternative funding sources. But the issues I heard today, and I'll send this to you, I'll get to you in a minute. There are issues with the joint use agreement that need to be addressed. We need to look at the Centennial Park Master Plan limitations. Actually, we need our staff, the city staff, and the school district staff to come together and look at the master plan. How can we improve Centennial Park? You got 2.5 acres over there in the southwest corner that can be developed, okay? We can realign things. You got parts of Dan Young complex that frankly are dirt. Okay? You haven't had the money to complete it. Okay? There's issues about access to facility, usage. If you look at the football field, it's worn out. We can't even renovate it? We refurbish it. There's no time for it. It's all dirt. And a lot of that dirt has to do the way we overuse it. We use it X amount of hours. The city uses it X amount of hours. Okay? We have to maintain, we can't maintain. Okay? So the issues, the limitation, the issue of hours, the maintenance, the downtime, security, that's what we heard. The parking concession, food concessions. So let me pass this, but I want to add a couple items to this that's not on here. And this has nothing, and this is something that's been thought out by the committee. Okay, this is kind of like a summary. But I want to add I want to add a couple items here that's not on here, and that's program scheduling, that's not on here. And it's the master plan. We need to sit down to see how can we improve that market plan, the master plan. See how we can make it work. Right? But if my estimate, we probably spent $30 million in facilities. That garage was about $8 million. Okay? These are things that the community is benefiting, the city is benefiting. Right? And so if you look at the partnership guidelines, the partnership challenge, I think if our staffs can come together, they can kind of work the master plan, look at these issues. I know that the Godinas parents and staff are looking at what kind of facilities they like to see. That can be incorporated into the master plan. So when you're looking at, should we put tennis courts? Should we put an aquatic center? Can we improve the Dan Young Soccer Complex? It's been like that for 10 years and the city hasn't put any money in it because it hasn't had the money, right? We can work together, but we gotta look at the master plan, right? And this is when, Mr. Benitez, when you're talking about how can you gain, remember, we spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
On it, and we completed the part. And so
Thank you.
But I think if you add program scheduling and the master plan, park master plan, I think our staffs can come together. I think the parents and the staff at Godinas can help us. What is it you need? And where does it fit? And how does it fit? And how can we look at alternative funding? Right? And there's other options. There's a state park grant that just passed. Right? That might be an option. Because remember, you don't have the money, we don't have the money. When we build infrastructure for sports facilities, we don't get matching funds. We pay, if it costs us $8 million for something, we pay it because there's no match from the state. But I think this gives you a framework. What do you think, Mr. Tino?
I think that's very well done. I was just thinking too, if we could add this into there as well. I was speaking with Townsend Public Affairs because the state right now.
Can you speak louder, please?
I was speaking with Townsend Public Affairs, who's our lobbyist in Sacramento. And one of the things that we have, because of the homeless issue that has occurred across the Santa Ana River Trail, is that we have an opportunity, because our park is adjacent to the river trail, to bring in some major funds that can help us renovate the park. that can help us with those fields.
That's great.
But it only becomes a strong application if we are in partnership with the school district on that.
That's right.
So that's something else that I'd like to put on there, so we can talk to our lobbyists to see how this conversation, aside from safety issues and programming, we can also find a way to bring in some revenue to also beautify the park.
Councilman Villegas?
Thank you. Quick comment. I just want to say, I'm on board trying to make things better, work things out. But just please keep in mind that we do have restrictions in the contract with the federal government. We do what we can, but we are also limited. And I just wanted you to know that.
Dr. Phillips, do you have any comments before I close it out?
Thank you.
I really appreciate the conversation and the dialogue amongst the council and the school board. I think that we're at a place where we can really make some progress. The one thing that I would hope to do is to work with the city to really kind of explore new options, whether that's contacting the federal government, because with all the school shootings and safety issues, I think that we can get some traction with the federal government in giving us at least an ear to think about things differently, not necessarily taking away park space, but how can we carve it up a little bit differently and secure schools. I think that they would be very happy to hear that districts and districts and cities are working together to try to make that happen, and maybe we can even apply for some demonstration grants of some other things, money out there that I don't even know if it exists, but let's go look for it to try to leverage the park out and to try to reconfigure what we already have.
Raul, any comments before we close out?
Yes, Madam President. I was listening very attentive to the requests and to the.
Can you speak loud? I'm sorry, they can't hear you.
Yeah, I was listening to Principal Church's comments and other staffs as well. And, I think that there's room for improvement. I think that we're also, I was just talking to my staff and I said, where are we with the National Park Service? And it turns out that the existing MOU was approved by them as part of some approval process that they had at the time. So we probably have to, whatever we propose has to be blessed and vetted by them.
Sure.
And so I think as we go through this process, individually, each one of these requests, to have you control, cut the middleman out, I don't have a problem with that. The other one was about securing the fencing and around the areas that the kids use. Again, I don't have a problem with that. And all the other ones, each one of them individually are pretty reasonable. But then I put on my federal bureaucrat hat. I never worked for the federal government, by the way, so full disclosure. But if I was to put it on and all that, I'm thinking collectively it starts to look less like a park, and I think more like a school facility. I think that's going to be the challenge, is that fine balance.
Right.
But I also agree that this rash of school violence and shootings and all that is an opportunity to probably revisit this. But I think so it's not going to be the city at the end of the day. It's going to be the Park Service, because of the deed restrictions that we're going to have to collectively work through that process. But I would recommend to this committee that this work, now that we've got a sense, go back to the TAC. I think at the staff level, come up and report back to this committee, periodically, and also try to make contact with the National Park Service and try to bring them in early. This is what we're going to do. Any guiding comments, and then go back and report to them periodically, keep them abreast. I think would be helpful.
And perhaps our federal legislators can help us in that regard.
Yes, we should brief them as well. But I think that's probably the variable is the National Park Service on this.
Councilman Benavides?
Ms. Williams, I just, not to put a damper or hamper on things, but I just want to make sure that you've only heard from 3 council members here, and we have differing points of view. So before you make any commitments on approaching the National Park Service or anything else, you need to make sure that, I just ask that you make sure that the rest of the council is fully aware that they've received the background and that you're following direction from council, just on this matter.
Very, very good comment. You're absolutely right. This committee activity needs to report out good information.
And we'll do the same with the school board as well. And I know we need to leave, but there's one more item. And I appreciate, again, all of us. And when you said we'll meet again, I'd like to meet sooner rather than later, so that this is not going on for 2 years, right? So that we can get things moving. So when is the next technical advisory committee meeting?
Monday, October 29th.
October. Like the end of the year, October?
No. The technical advisory?
Oh,
No.
technical, I'm talking
I
about
was
this
like,
one, I'm sorry.
wow.
You're already closing this?
No.
No, I'm not closing it.
Oh, no, it's monthly, so.
Yes.
Okay, so then we'll meet way before October, if it's everybody's schedule, so that we can get an
Yes,
update and that we
yes,
can
yes.
share with the community, because we can't wait till October.
Yeah.
So we'll meet sooner than that, if that works out, and we'll reach out to everybody with schedules and whatnot. The only other item, and I know it's late and I apologize, and I hope we can just clear this up very, very quickly, is we had discussed the sales of food at Eddie Westfield for Santa Ana High School. And so there are parent boosters, there is a parent booster at Santa Ana High School, and I believe an email came from the city stating that as long as Santa Ana High School has a booster, they're allowed to sell food at the football games and keep that money. Is that correct, Jenny?
We treat everybody the same, whether it be Santa High School, modern day Santa College, what have you, everybody's treated the same. They could sell if they want, okay? Enrique, do you have anything to add with that?
So I just want to clarify that, I know you guys always say that, I really appreciate that, and Mr. Bishop's probably gnawing on his teeth back there wanting to come up, but Santa Ana High School has never been able to sell food. Modern Day does and other schools, but Santa Ana High School has never been able to. In that food concession stand that you guys have, we've never been able to sell food and keep the money. So I just want a clarification before we.
Yes, Santa Ana High School. Coach Bishop?
Principal Bishop.
I was a freshman when he was at Valley High School, and he was the varsity coach. So that's
Okay,
what
well
we-
now he's Principal Bishop.
Yeah. Real quick, yes, Santa Ana High School does have the authority to sell upon request.
Okay.
I communicated again, I initially communicated in November with Coach Brian Lilly, who's the athletic director. He stated he was not interested in selling. I again communicated with Coach Brian Lilly today, via email. He again stated that he's not interested in selling.
Principal Bishop, you want to come up? You can't talk from the back. You got to come up. So the point of contact is our principals, and so we just want to, and again, it's communication, right? Who is the point of contact?
And by the
So-
way, there a time when we met here last time,
Right, and we talked about this.
you directed, so had Arvo met with Dr. Keatley and I did.
No, I didn't. We directed.
You directed.
We
Everybody
all
did.
directed.
Everybody did. So we met and we stated at the time that everybody is able to.
Right, and so there's miscommunication. We just want to clear it. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. I know, again, like you, Mr. Church, thank you for coming. Could you just clarify this for us?
I'm not aware that they don't want to sell food, but I think we really should present it to the boosters. But I'm more concerned because we were told at one point that they actually had vendors that were contracted for the bowl. That's not true. Because when we go to the bowl, there are actually people there selling food, they're actually vendors. So, can you clarify that?
Yes, we do have, in previous years, we did have a contractor sell out their food. Again, we do it as a service to the community, to the participants that come up here. Like I mentioned before, I made two communication requests with Coach Brian Lilly. One was today again, where he repeated that he's not interested in selling food for his football players.
So that's one person, okay? He doesn't speak for the school. And I just want to at least give that opportunity that we have visual and performing arts. We have people that are actually interested in selling food. They're out there on weekends. They're doing a lot beyond the athletics. So, and I think if he talked to his boosters, they would probably be interested in possibly.
So this goes back, to communication,
And
right?
we can go ahead and do that. Again, regarding the Santa Ana Stadium, with every high school that's ever been involved, we deal with one point person who helps, just like we do at Godinas. We actually, very rarely do we talk to Principal Church. We deal with Coach Combs, who recently retired. We're now dealing with the athletic director, Lisa Stream. So again, we always have that one point person who helps us out regarding the football games, the soccer games.
So what you do in regards to the season that would be coming up, what do you do?
I consistently communicate with the athletic director to say, okay, this is what you have as your reservation. These are your games. Tell me if there's any changes. Again, because that's always been our point person. Again,
So when we
Ma'am,
communicate, go ahead.
One of the things that I would recommend, and I think we have to be careful when we communicate. The question was, is Santa Ana High School allowed to sell?
Correct.
Can sell? The answer should have just been yes. At this moment, we have not been told that anyone wants to sell. The answer is yes. Done. At that point, it's done. So here's what I recommend. I recommend that, communications, when you communicate, anytime you communicate to the athletic director, always CC the administrator. It's not bad practice. Takes 2 seconds.
And I would
Excellent
almost
comment.
prefer you, on this matter, you would deal directly with me, so I can deal with the boosters, because you, depending on the person that you talk to, it either dies, the question dies, and you think you have the answer, when I guarantee you that there are people on our campus that are very interested in making money, because they do it on very odd times, and once we start winning even more games, more people want to sell, so.
Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Benavides. Councilman Benavides.
Just, if
I already figured that out.
if
Hold on
the
one second.
district, if the school, Santana High School, any other school, if they're interested in potentially selling concession stand, what would be who do they need to ask or
So
commit?
this is during the reservation.
Right.
Go to the reservation office.
Okay.
And then
So
there's
who's that?
procedures, it's in the
So,
combined.
okay.
There's procedures though now, if they are gonna sell food, now the healthcare agency is involved.
Okay, so basically, I want to put the onus, if it's a school or school district, if Mr. Bishop or anybody else, I just want to know who him or anybody else the school should contact, rather than putting it on Mr. Maraban to be contacting with. So,
When you say his office, or not him directly?
Me directly.
You directly.
And again, and I communicate with Coach Ryan, and he just like.
No, we got
so
the
at this
thank you,
point, so if
appreciate
anybody, any of the schools, you can directly
So you can directly
communicate.
communicate.
And it doesn't matter what sporting, if it could be soccer, it could be.
And it doesn't matter what sport it is.
Okay.
And thank you, Councilman Tenahiro, because I agree, when we do send emails, please include the principal, very, very important, and the assistant principals. And we can give you a list of the most updated ones, so that there's no lack of communication. So, because there's been some changes in our administration. Again, it's just talking and communicating and working together. We serve the same people, the same community, the same kids, and we do want to keep them safe, and we want to work together, and so, and believe me, we do not want to control everything, because there's a lot of responsibility, again, so we'll share it. And Mr. Bishop, so now we have a clear understanding for the food. So
And
if
on
there are
your-
no,
On your emails, make sure that you contact by phone, because it usually goes from outside the district, it goes to junk mail.
so how about after this meeting, you can discuss with him, okay? So if there are no other comments, let me go around the table for closing comments, and I'm gonna start on this side. Councilman Benavides?
No comments, thank you.
No.
Oren?
Just a point of clarification, so the document that the city handed
Can't
out,
take
this
that.
one, on page 4, there's a section here actually that articulates, and Jeannie had kind of alluded to it, that at the bowl, so it actually is in writing on the page 4?
Right, I read it. I just
Oh.
needed clarification for the meeting.
Got it.
Thank you. David Councilman Benavides has a take back.
No, just on minutes, I know we approved them already. There are a couple of spots where my name was misspelled within that.
Can you set it with your city staff?
Is it our staff that misspelled my
Yes,
name?
your staff
All right,
was the minutes.
all right. We'll,
All right.
We'll see who needs to be reprimanded.
Dr. Heatley?
I'm good, madam.
Superintendent Phillips?
Thank you.
Mr. Bishop? 2 minutes?
I'm good.
Mr. Church?
Well, I'll be a little brief. As
A little.
as far as your constituents, I can tell you as principal at Godinas, I represent the city as well. Our kids are your constituents and their parents. By us using the word control, for lack of better words, I guarantee you the community will be better served, because things will be more organized. We won't need any double booking. We're gonna upgrade our facilities, right? And it's going to be a home away from home for everybody in the city. So I appreciate us having this conversation. I'm looking forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Teddy?
Just looking forward to work this out, the technical advisory. Believe it or not, I've been here since, in particular with joint use, since it started with Godinas. Head of the Rob brought me on board, so previous to the current superintendent, there's been a couple of them. There's been a couple
Just a few.
There's been a few of Mr. Williams as well. And you know what, but everybody that's worked either on the city side or the school district side, they're very helpful. We just wanna work things out, wanna be sure that the students are priority. So, we'll work at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Manager, Roll?
I think what was underscored today is where we could all probably do a little bit better job is communication.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm walking away with.
All right, Councilman Villegas?
Thank everyone for being here this evening.
Councilman Tenahiro?
No, and the same thing, I mean, I want to thank Councilmember Benavides and Councilmember Villegas, because the reality is with these individuals that are standing here, there may be a difference of opinion on how to get there, but at the end of the day, that difference of opinion creates a better product. So we can disagree on some areas, but we can always try to make it better, and that's where that comes in. Everybody here is passionate about the city. I was talking to Councilmember Villegas, and he's creatively, he's trying to be creative on how we can do this. We all understand we serve the same constituents. We just want to make create a better product. So thank you, Madam President, for setting up the meeting and making sure that we're all here and spending some good time to discuss this.
Sponsor?
Thank you for all being here, and I'm looking forward for our staffs to come together with a master plan, looking for the Godinas family, so to speak, to come and put their input as to how the master plan could be, their ideas could be included.
Can I get you to say go Bruins for the record?
No, it's not your time to talk. You already talked.
Yeah, good.
So let me, before we are you done? Hold on. So before we close out, before I close the meeting, so I also want to thank all of you for being here, and I think, again, it's just a matter of communicating and being open to change, right? So we have to be open to change. Our community has changed over the years, and so our schools have changed, and they're doing great things, and the city's doing what they can, and we're doing what we can, so it's just a matter of communicating. And I'd like to schedule a meeting sooner than October, so we'll be reaching out to you. So hopefully you guys will have some movement, some momentum going on, Oren, before October. So we're looking maybe like 2 months from now, if you can get back to us. And so I just want for the community to say thank you all for being here. I know the Godinas parents, Mr. Church, they've always approaching you. They approach us as well. I love receiving their emails and reading them. I really do. And so, they're very passionate about their kids, and they are our constituents. And so, again, when the technical advisory committee meets, somewhere back there, have a discussion about that pool that they want, those things. I know it's a hard topic, but we got to have those conversations about what the needs are for our community. And so, again, thank you all for being here. And we'll be back here in 2 months. Hopefully 2 months works for everybody, or September roughly. So thank you. The meeting's adjourned. September.